Hello and welcome again. This is another video in the Bhagavad Gita series. This one is on Bhagavad Gita Chapter 3, verses 41 to 43, which are the last three verses of this chapter. And in a way, they sum up the conclusion of this particular chapter. Thus, you must begin by disciplining the senses, Lord of the Bharatas. You must curb this great symbol of falsehood, which destroys both awareness and knowledge of the self. The senses are said to be superb, but the mind is said to be greater still, and awareness is said to be even greater than the mind, but the center is even greater than awareness. Thus, awareness leads to centered consciousness by focusing and steadying the mind. Great warrior, you will conquer the greatest enemy if you conquer desire. So you'll remember that this chapter is all about karma yoga, the yoga of action, of how to act, right? And here, after having just explained the nature of desire and how what Krishna calls lust ends up clouding our perception of reality. So he says the first thing you have to do here is to discipline the senses. And he describes a series of processes here. But the first part is discipline. And the discipline he's talking about here is not a discipline in the sense of restriction of the self, but rather a restriction of everything that isn't the self. You're not trying to repress your feelings or even repress your desires. It's a discipline that evolves naturally. A lot of people have trouble with discipline because they see it as something that they're imposed on by somebody else, or that they're imposing on themselves reluctantly by some reason from outside, right? Because, you know, this is what they were told they have to do, so they have to go and do it, but they don't really want to. You might wake up at 7 in the morning to go to work without somebody else forcing you to, but you still feel like you've been forced to by somebody else, right? And you think you just have to. So people have bad experiences with discipline. But here, what discipline is talking about is a sense of focus that evolves naturally when you first begin to witness the senses and then practice that witnessing with awareness. You'll note that there's a kind of hierarchy of the steps towards reaching that condition of the center, what Krishna calls here the center. A series of progressive steps, of virtues that have to be developed. And students of the Yifa Society will recognize the similarity between the 4 steps here and the 4 facets of virtue in the Yifa curriculum, Yuan Han Li Jin, which are discipline, harmony or balance, truth or reality, and union. So discipline is what's needed first, so that you cannot be, so you can witness the senses instead of be driven blindly by the senses. Okay, and witness means engaging in the most practical sense. It means engaging in a routine of regular spiritual practice, of regular exercises that allow you to focus the senses, that requires concentration. So this could be yoga, for example, certain types of yoga, or it could be qigong, for example, like regular qigong practice. It could be many other things too. Every esoteric system will have a set of spiritual disciplines which are essential to get as the fundamental. You can't jump ahead here. You can't go straight to being in the center. You can't say, well, that's the best thing, is being in that state of union. That's what I want, so I'm just going to go there. Because first, you have to undo all of these kind of bad habits, you could say, which are the conditionings that have blocked that. The inferior persona, which is covering your ability to recognize the superior individual. So first, you need discipline. When you have established a basic level of discipline, then you're capable of beginning to examine the mind, right? Which is greater than the senses, right? The mind, you begin to explore it through a series of self-inquiry, through a process of observing yourself, of observing your inner workings, which can include all kinds of things, all kinds of exercises. In the Yifa Society, the I Ching is a big part of that, for example. And in that process, you can then move on from there to achieve states of awareness, of experiencing reality, of seeing truth. And this is really great, but it's not actually being truth yet. So there's another step. It's only when you get to that point of being able to observe truth as it really is, as opposed to your projections of it, that you can then reach that stage beyond just awareness and reaching the center, which is attainment. So these are the steps from where you get from disciplining the senses, to awareness, to centered consciousness through focusing and steadying the mind. And if you can do that, you end up conquering, as Krishna puts it, desire. You overcome the lust of result, because when you get to the center, you realize that you weren't the center. You're not the self-referencing point, right? But when you get to the center and you can experience the center and you realize you're within the part of that whole, then you don't need the lust of result anymore, because you've got what you were looking for. That's it for this video and for this chapter of the Gita. But I'll be back soon with more. And if you like this video, please feel free to share it. Please subscribe. Check out the other playlists here, especially the Yifa Society. And thank you very much for listening.